Turboranger was the first ever Heisei era series for Super Sentai, and while that may not be as important a distinction as it is for shows like Ultraman or Kamen Rider, producer Takayuki Suzuki mentioned when asked about the show that he wanted it to have a much simpler storyline, referring to how previous entries, like Live Man, may have been a bit too complex for child audiences. Now, a simpler storyline doesn't necessarily mean a bad one, if done properly. So, does this show succeed in that arena? I'll let you find out. But I should mention that the ratings for this show resulted in Sentai getting booted from its Saturday morning time slot and moved to a probational Friday evening one that the show held until Mega Ranger. Not really sure if that tells you anything, but today we're watching Kousoku Sentai Turboranger. Episode 1 actually isn't even the show's pilot. Technically, it is a 30-minute special called The Great Gathering of 10 Sentai, Counting on You Turboranger, meant to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the show. Even though Live Man was already meant to be the show's 10-year celebration, I don't know, man. The anniversary stuff in Sentai never makes sense. It opens on the main villains of this series, noting how they can sense the attempts past villains have made to take over the planet. Suddenly, the Turbo Rangers appear, claiming to do everything in their power to stop this new threat, and they're rooted on by the 10 previous teams. This is before Go Ranger and Jacka were considered Sentai series, so there's a few times they actually refer to Battle Fever J as being the first, and I'm not gonna lie, it did kind of throw me off a few times. It's really nothing more than a glorified clip show meant to recap the events of the past 10 years, but it is pretty fun. In the next episode, we actually get the theme song, and I think it's okay. I know a lot of people really like it, but for me, it's just kind of alright. The story opens on some construction workers mistakenly excavating an ancient magical space rock from the bottom of the ocean that awakens a group of villains from 20,000 years ago. Happens all the time. Suddenly, 5 teenagers with attitude develop psychosis and start to hear voices, causing much concern for their teacher, Miss Yamaguchi, who unironically is the best character of the early show. We don't really have much time for that right now. The students' names are Riki, our Red Ranger, who dons fingerless gloves and occupies most of the dialogue. It's a very red-centric show, and again, while I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, shows like Kyoryuger or Q Ranger I think do that really well. Unfortunately, Riki doesn't have much of a personality past being the show's fearless leader. Next we have Daichi, our Black Ranger, who I often saw being referred to as the best character in the show when researching it. Most people point out how deep and emotional his storyline is, and not really sure what they're talking about. He has some really cool moments that are really badass, but it's not really anything I would consider all that deep. Yohei, the Blue Ranger, is probably my favorite character. He has the most personality on the team. He's the squad's Casanova, often finding himself accompanied by a gaggle of shorties, not even because he's particularly suave or cool or anything like that. He's just really funny. Like, that's literally it. He's the team's funny guy, comic relief, and ladies man, a combination of traits I feel like we really don't see much of in these shows. Shunsuke, the Yellow Ranger, you would assume is the show's comic relief, given the snapback and overalls, and he kinda is, but Yohei is more so, I guess. I more so noticed that the show uses him as a vehicle to trauma dump. Like, anytime there's a particularly messed up or traumatic backstory, they often relegate it to Shunsuke, which makes me kind of feel bad for him, given the fact that his only other character trait is that he's stupid. The show never outright calls him stupid, but it's more of a vibe I get based on how the other characters talk to him. Haruna is our Pink Ranger, and she's the resident girl on the team. She has the same number of qualities you would assign to any female Sentai character of this era of the show, with the bonus fact that she has this blood-curdling scream. Like, it's so bad, but also kind of iconic. I found myself often getting taken out of serious moments by noticing it. And it's like so potent that I felt like I really had to note this for her. The group is thrown out of math class into generic Sentai backdrop 3. 2 is the middle of the city, and 1 is actually a different quarry. Here is where they witness the revival of the Bohma Hundred Tribe, and we're introduced to Dark Bohma Jimba, Princess Bohma Germain, or Jarmin, and Bohma Professor Lehda. Don't worry too much about memorizing their names, they all get replaced midway through the show. They immediately notice the group of students and attack them as vengeance against the humans that imprisoned them so long ago, when suddenly our team hears the voices again, along with a flash of light gifting them the bracelets, claiming they'll be able to transform into the Turbo Rangers with just the press of a button. But it's not working, so they're forced to retreat with the help of some guy that pulls up in this bitchin' Jeep Cherokee. That's not a gendered use of bitchin', it's bitchin' as in like it's a cool car. He claims to be Dr. Dazai, who developed their changers along with the help of a fairy named Chiron, who is the voice they've been hearing this whole time. He then briefs them on the history of the war 20,000 years ago when humans and fairies lived in harmony until the Bohma tribe began worshipping dark magic, leading to them being sealed away. From then on, fairies have been protecting the seal, secretly guarding the piece of earth. But that seal has been weakened over time, and Chiron is our last living fairy. The advancement of human civilization has brought pollution to the planet that has led to the fairies' extinction. Climate change literally killed them, and y'all think these shows are not political. I don't know what to tell you. The earth begins to quake and milk literally spills, but there's no time to cry over it as Dr. Dazai fears they're trying to bring back the Bohma Castle, prompting the Rangers to immediately spring into action as to prevent the revival of Great Bohma Emperor Reagan. I'm sorry, my bad. Ragu. Aw, shit. Ragorn. I was more scared at the thought of Reagan coming back, to be honest. They run through a series of explosions to find Chiron, who apparently only they are able to see because they believe in her from the bottom of their hearts. Dr. Dazai needs this special headset to see her. I guess he just doesn't believe, despite her being literally his only friend. I should also mention his obsession with cars. Despite them being the leading factor to her entire race getting wiped out, he's also the creator of the turbo machines, which I would imagine contributes significantly to our carbon footprint. You might immediately assume that they just run on fairy magic, but no, we literally see them exhausting fumes into the ozone layer, so I actually just believe he's a giant hypocrite. I kinda hate him, honestly. Also, another general shows up out of nowhere called Rage Flying Bohma Zulten. I guess he was just too big to fit in with the rest of them, so they had to seal him separately. Am I body shaming? Is it even possible to body shame this thing? So now that they believe in Chiron, the Rangers are able to transform into the Speeding Squadron Turbo Rangers. I really like these suits, to be honest. The helmets feel very modern, and I dig the giant T emblem on their chest. And we might be getting a bit ahead of ourselves, but I like that the first initial of their mecha can be found on their belt buckles. Not a huge fan of them all having yellow accents. Meanwhile, yellow is forced to have black trimming, but it's not really all that serious. When confronted with a series of fighter jets, Riki is advised to summon Turbo GT, which takes the form of a very reliable looking sedan that's also able to fly. Not gonna front, that's actually pretty cool. The episode ends with Chiron hearing what she believes to be the roar of sacred beast Lakia, a monster they thought to have gone extinct some time ago. And we meet this beast in the next episode. Lakia is an ancient deity tasked with keeping the Bohma Castle sealed, but similar to the fairies, he's grown weak over the years due to the negative impact humans have had on the environment. They really lay it on thick in this show, and I kind of appreciate that. The monster of the week this episode drains the Rangers of their powers, leaving them with these all-white suits. That seemed to be a lot of effort for this one-off gag, but they do end up bringing them back a few times, so they definitely got their money's worth. Eventually, the villains revive the Bohma Castle and Great Bohma Emperor Ragorn, who is actually terrifying looking. Riki, attempting to find a way to get their changers working again, notes how earlier the Rangers were only able to transform after confirming their belief in fairies. He even quotes something their teacher said in the last episode, saying that their youthfulness is how they're able to face problems, assuming a combination of those two factors may allow them to transform again. Dr. Dazai admires from afar, noting how youth is what brings power and greatness. The Rangers courageously run into battle without their powers, entrusting their belief in Shidan, Lakia, and their youth. They're able to transform once again and bring color back to their uniforms. They also have bikes now, and Red has this go-kart. They don't ever properly introduce them, but I really do like the design of these things. They defeat the monster of the week, which of course grows giant, so Dr. Dazai informs them of their turbo machines, summoning Turbo GT, Turbo Truck, Turbo Jeep, Turbo Buggy, and Turbo Wagon. I have a real soft spot for car mecha in this franchise for whatever reason, so I really enjoy seeing them drive around in these things. I really like how the giant T on the mecha's chest emulates the Rangers' suits. It also transforms in a pretty neat way, though I'm not a huge fan of splitting Pink's mech in half. Something about that, along with jamming these appendages into her windshield, makes me feel like she wouldn't end up living after that. But this thing also has roller skates, which is really sick. The episode ends with Lakia dissolving into the stars and becoming a constellation, promising to watch over Shidon and the Turbo Rangers in their battles to come. The team is proud of the responsibility that has been passed on to them and promise to defend the planet and fight pollution. As always, I like to give you guys a chance to watch this show for yourselves before moving forward. Unfortunately, this video may be your most legal avenue for watching this series in America, so I really don't know where to send you. Normally, I would tell you about the Internet Archive, but it would appear as though I blew up the spot. Toei has removed literally everything Sentai related from that website, and a lot of people in my comments section have been blaming me for that. So, my bad. With that being said, if you Google the show, you're probably going to be able to find it pretty easily. I promise it's not that hard. You can actually also Google my Patreon, where you'll find my monthly video diary, along with monthly reactions to Toku movies with friends over Discord. I actually got a few people together to watch the movie for this show over there if you're interested in that sort of thing. Along with all that, you'll also be credited at the end of all of my long form videos. It's only $5 a month, and I really appreciate it. But times are tough, and everyone is going through weird financial situations, so please don't feel like you need to donate. In episode 4, we find out that Riki's grades have been slipping, and he's messing up during baseball practice. This has the teacher we met in episode 1 concerned about Riki, which really doesn't amount to much. I thought this was going to be an episode where Riki had to learn to balance his normal life along with the responsibilities thrusted upon him as a Turbo Ranger. But he ends up just throwing a baseball at the monster at the end of this episode, and somehow that snaps everything back to normal and brings back his mojo. The monster has the ability to roll people into human dango, which is that Japanese snack with the different colored balls on the stick. This is actually another horrifying image if you really look at it. I really wasn't expecting the show to give me the heebie-jeebies like this, but somehow it does it a few times. At one point, their teacher is rolled up into the dango ball with Dr. Dazai, which doesn't seem all that important now, but trust me, this is probably the biggest plot point in early Turbo Ranger. More interestingly, this episode was released on the same day the Turbo Ranger movie premiered, which I find to be surprising because normally I associate Sentai movies with airing in the summertime, but I'm also surprised that they were willing to drop a movie for a show that barely had 3 episodes at this point, considering how episode 1 is essentially a special that is barely about the Turbo Rangers as it is. But I guess that kind of means that it's now time for our first intermission. As early as it may be in the video, we now have to talk about Kousoku Sentai Turboranger, the movie. I honestly can't tell you a damn thing that happens in this movie. Like most Sentai movies, it's kind of just another episode of the show with a higher budget. And to be honest, I'm not even sure if this film had a budget, considering how most of the areas could have been filmed on the same day as other episodes. There's really not much to say about this plot-wise, besides the Turbo Rangers having to deal with this new threat that's apparently scarier and bigger and badder than anything they faced before in the last 3 episodes. It's really not saying much because we've only ever seen the Turbo Rangers defeat 2 monsters. Like I said before, I watched this on a Discord call with some friends, and you can see the full reaction up there. Here's some of my favorite moments of it, though. What's interesting here is that, I don't think they had this in widescreen before.
No, they just zoomed in.
They just zoomed in because, the top of his head here, I don't know if you guys can tell, it's,
I
chopped
noticed
off.
that.
It's not like that in the show.
Why does he have a little house?
The girl is 3 centimeters tall, dude. She's tiny.
Christian, you about to piss me off. I ain't seen a car yet.
No, that's the thing, man. There's no cars in this fucking show. I have a question for you guys, and I've been trying to find an answer on the internet for so long. Is this little girl white?
I think so. I think she's white.
I think she's mixed.
She's definitely part Japanese, but is she part white? I cannot tell.
I think she's part white.
I'm gonna be honest. That front shot of her, I think she's just Asian.
You think she's just Asian?
Oh.
Yep.
I think that this is the most conversing about the actual movie we've done.
So,
white mom, Asian dad.
Yes.
Here's my take. There's something else. There's something else mixed in there. There's something else going on.
There's something else
going on. I don't know what. I get the vibe.
Looked it up. I
get the vibe.
You found it, Brevin? Can you send me the source?
I found information. I do not know the actual full source, but according to my drama list, and I don't know where they got this source from, but according to my drama list, her father is Japanese while her mother is Danish.
Isn't that exactly what I said?
That's what I said! That's what I said. I told you.
Exactly what Nox just said. In the next episode, Princess Germain finds that a Bohma monster has ended up in a local museum and awakens him. He has the ability to make people act as though they're from the Edo period. This affects everyone in the town except for Daichi and a little boy he encounters while out on a run, and these two get entangled in a variety of shenanigans centered around this concept. There's not much to this episode, besides the discovery that Daichi actually really loves jogging. A fun fact that will actually come up about him a few times. You know it's rough when that's literally his entire character description. The next episode begins with Haruna running into this old man and his grandchildren cleaning out the pollution from this river in hopes to make it suitable for fishing again. The young boy wishes that there were a kaiju capable of cleaning out the pollution. Coincidentally, his grandfather drives a stake into the burial site of a Bohma able to do exactly that, eating pollution from the lake using his tongue. Whoa. Unfortunately, the monster uses this pollution to create Bohma zombies, which he sends out to attack the city. The team seem to have a hard time handling them, so Dr. Dazai develops a set of personal weapons for the five to use, introducing the GT Sword, W Hammer, J Gun, B Bow Gun, and W Stick. I don't know, man. I feel like the monster already has a W stick. You feel me? But no, these are pretty neat. I always like when the team has individual weapons. Admittedly, though, I do think Pink's just is kind of lame since it's literally just a stick. But it does have the ability to turn into a boomerang, which makes me wonder why they didn't just give her a boomerang. The episode ends with the Turbo Rangers explaining to the kid how it's impossible for there to be one simple solution for cleaning up the lake water. But that means that it's up to them as children and the future generations of the world to take responsibility and make real change. The episode ends with their grandfather expressing how he can rest easy knowing that the future of the lake is safe in their hands. It's a very on-theme episode, and I really dig that. In the next one, we actually get Jimba's backstory. Back in the day, he used to be a warrior who fought under a princess he was in love with, but she rejected him after he was brutally wounded in battle. His body passed away, but as Professor Lehda put it, his grudge lived on, turning him into an incel. And from that day, he would attack young couples and feed their hearts to this beast that he is now awakened in modern day to terrorize people in love. Its only weakness being cherry blossom trees, which, as you could probably guess, have greatly dwindled in population due to the increase in pollution. But Riki comes up with a pretty cool plan to pose as the boyfriend of one of the girls the monster ate earlier in the episode. This allows him to enter the belly of the beast and throw out cherry blossoms, which cause the monster to throw up all the humans and save the day. Another episode centered on the theme. I'm digging it. Episode 8 opens on Yohei doing this. He's introduced to the new girl in town, who's interested in joining the swim team, which he is also a part of. Her family recently moved into a cursed house that was built on the burial site of a Bohma thousands of years ago. And Yohei was actually friends with the little girl that lived there 13 years ago, who was forced to move after her parents passed away in that house. Not wanting to lose another friend, Yohei does everything in his power to free the house from its curse so the girl and her family can live there happily. Unironically, this is probably the most we've learned about a team member so far. It's not much, but it's something, and so it makes this episode pretty cool. In episode 9, Shunsuke befriends this girl, or rather stalks her, considering how he spends half the episode staring at her through windows and her running away from him. She's played by the same actress who will go on to play Blue Swallow a few years later, so that's got to be fun for like 6 of you. We also find out that Shunsuke does gymnastics this episode, which seems to be a trend. I fear the writers may have forgotten to give the characters personalities, so they just gave them different sports of interest. I'm actually just now realizing Haruna doesn't get a sport to partake in, which is crazy that the woman character still doesn't get as much characterization when the bar is already in hell. Here's hoping next episode she tears it up on the pickleball court or something. Blue Swallow wants to be a really good flute player, but she has a nasty case of carpal tunnel, and she accidentally awakens a Bohma that promises to cure her hand and allow her to play music. The trade-off is that her flute now has the ability to suck the youth out of children, because it's not a Turbo Ranger episode if we're not talking about kids or the climate crisis. Like how in the next episode, it's Children's Day in Japan, which is a Japanese holiday about children. In episode 11, we discover that Riki has a motorcycle, which I was going to make a big deal about considering how he's a high schooler, but then I remember that he rides one as a ranger, so I guess maybe like it's not from out of nowhere. Dr. Dazai could have like lended it to him or something. It's about Riki delivering this bento box to a child, and there's a monster able to summon way more foot soldiers than they're normally able to, which is crazy. I might sound pretty bored with this episode, which I was honestly for most of it, but then Riki does this really sick fake out. And honestly, that made me come around on this one. Episode 12 actually has a sort of interesting plot. You remember that bird dog abomination that was killed off in episode 3, but is actually super important to this show's lore, but no one ever talks about him? He shows up again in this episode. Zulten awakens a Bohma that was actually converted to Lakia's side during the Great War. He was sealed away 20,000 years ago after attempting to kill Ragorn, but is now being gaslit by Zulten into thinking that the Turbo Rangers are the reason for Lakia's passing, which actually makes this a super interesting force the Turbo Rangers have to face, until Zulten decides to blow up his own cover, admitting to everything at the end of the episode for absolutely no reason. Like, this is entirely unprovoked. But the monster still refuses to believe Zulten lied to him after this is revealed for whatever reason, and is only convinced that the Turbo Rangers are chill when Riki pushes him out of the way from this attack, which causes him to fall on his hands and knees, much like the position assumed by the suit actor for Lakia, reminding the viewers that this is just a dude in a dressed up chastity outfit. And it's only then that he decides to join forces with the team, where he then immediately dies, only to be made giant and then killed again in the robot fight. And it's not like the other Rangers don't take issue with this or protest the idea of killing off an innocent creature, but Riki insists that they fucking throw him into space even after he comes to his senses again in the mech fight. The next episode, Haruna's friend falls victim to a Bohma passing as a romantic fortune teller that steals the hearts of young girls in love. So the Turbo Rangers organize a stakeout where they witness their teacher also falling victim to this monster, who does claim that she's in love with someone. The Rangers wonder as to who this could be, but if you remember the one plot point that I told you to, you may not be surprised. This is one of those wedding trope episodes. You probably know what I mean if you've seen a lot of Sentai before. Like, sometimes they just have an episode where the team has to stage a fake wedding. It's that whole sort of drill. This next one's actually a big one. There's this new badass 30-year-old teenager in town calling himself the Wandering Transfer Student, who claims to have gone to several schools before ending up here. He spends most of the episode bullying the Rangers during their after-school activities, except for Haruna, because she doesn't have one. Or I guess she kind of does, because we do see her after school holding a stick, so I think that kind of means something. I don't know why I'm so apprehensive to say a Power Ranger does color guard, as if they don't already dance around like jackasses as it is. He seems to have caught on to the Rangers' secret identities, and there's this one scene where he goes absolutely nutty on a piano. The girls love it, and like Buddy's doing handstands and shit. He's kind of catching a vibe. It's pretty fun. Also in this episode, the Rangers are introduced to a new villain, Wandering Bohma Yamimaru. Wonder who that could be. Thankfully, Riki's not stupid and gets suspicious of the new kid, though he's interrupted before he's able to confront him. He's too strong for the Rangers to take on, even capable of withstanding the plasma shoot, which is one of their finishing moves. The episode ends with the Rangers questioning this new general's identity, and Dr. Dazai wanting to come up with a more capable weapon able to surpass the plasma shoot for this new threat. Episode 15, the Rangers receive a challenge from the Wandering Exchange student via this letter stabbed into a tree outside of the school. And I thought it was going to be fun, like, oh, he's gonna challenge them to like a competition in all their sports. But he actually just wanted to beat all of their collective asses, Haruna included. You have all these girls swooning over him while he's literally punching this poor girl in the teeth. I really don't feel like that's how this would go down in real life. Of course, he flees the scene afterwards, so only the Turbo Rangers receive punishment for this. After that, the Rangers are invited to Dr. Dazai's to help work on this new weapon, meant to be more powerful than the plasma shoot. But the city ends up getting attacked as they're working on it, so they send Haruna, Riki, and Daichi to handle this, while Yohei and Shunsuke stay back to help, which I guess would mean that these two are the smart ones. I don't know. But I do know that Riki fucking loves baseball, so that's enough for me. The three run into Yamimaru and a Bohma that give them a pretty hard time, so Yohei and Shunsuke decide to steal the weapon and use it on the battlefield before it's finished, which just results in everyone getting injured. The monster retreats for now, but it isn't fully finished off. But after analyzing the weapon, Dazai informs the team that the cannon will explode within an hour, since it was unfinished, which will cause an explosion that will destroy everything in a 500-meter radius. So the two responsible for this situation volunteer to move the weapon to a secluded area before anything happens. Jesus Christ, she wasn't in suit for that, so that almost made it worse. Ragorn is getting jealous of all the smoke Yamimaru is able to get from the Turbo Rangers and sends Zulten to attack Yohei and Shunsuke while they're transporting the cannon. Ironically, they're saved by the traveling high schooler, helping them on the principle that they're his classmates, but time is of the essence, so they're not able to talk things out thoroughly, and after noticing how Yamimaru and Nagoreboshi both have a hand injury, Riki comes to the conclusion that they must be the same person. He literally had this same realization in the last episode, so I don't know like why this is news to him, but I'm glad someone's catching on. I would be more upset about this right now, but Nagoriboshi just decided to pull out a fucking gun. For some reason, it's always more intimidating when it's a real gun, but we should be thankful that Riki noticed this, as he was able to take the bullet in Sue for his friends and confront the wandering high schooler, who reveals that he is in fact Yamimaru. Yo, I literally thought it was gonna be Wayne Brady, what the fuck? As this is happening, Yohei and Shunsuke find a safe spot to leave the cannon, conveniently placing it just in front of this family of 4, which I would argue is an excellent spot for this. But for whatever reason, they panic and decide to just throw the whole thing at the monster of the week, which I guess works too. The episode ends with Nagoriboshi swearing to one day defeat the Rangers, but he begins to panic when Riki calls out his blood being red. I should mention that the Bohmas apparently have green blood, but they don't really draw attention to this until like later episodes. So if this is your first watch through like me, you'll probably have no clue why that matters at all until like a few episodes down the line. So at this point, Yamimaru / Nagoriboshi is like the most interesting character. Scratch that, actually the most interesting thing in this show going on right now. I kind of feel like if this were a modern season, he would have ended up being an Okuagata, Murasame, Gary Yudo type character. Not a 6th Ranger necessarily, because he's definitely supposed to be evil throughout the entire show, but more of like an antagonist Ranger, especially since he's not meant to be on the same side as the Rangers or the Bohma tribe, and is actually more of this like third party. In episode 16, the Rangers are testing an engine meant to power the V-Turbo Bazooka. Everything appears to be going well until they're interrupted by Yamimaru, who separates their link to the fairies, draining their powers and making them unable to see Shiran. So now that the Rangers are left defenseless, they end up wandering through the woods when they are confronted with Yamimaru again, until Shiran flashes this bright light to blind him and allow the Rangers to get away. It's here that the Rangers realize why they are the only ones able to see fairies. Riki mentions how as a kid, he witnessed the same light emitting from a tree. He also met this bozo who has no business dressing like a Dynasty Warriors character in 1989, but he explained to Riki that the light was fairy souls emitting from their bodies after succumbing to great injuries. Those bathed in this light were said to be gifted special power. Yet he has no recollection of this when meeting Shiran in episode 1. And after this, the other Rangers are all like, "Oh yeah, me too." Insane that they've never talked about this before. Like, imagine seeing a tree full of dead fairies and never mentioning it to anyone, including your one homegirl, who is literally a fairy. So they decide to venture out to see this same light once more, but they're unsure how to proceed considering how many trees have been cut down due to deforestation. Thankfully, Daichi remembers Lakia's forest, and they decide to head that way. They run into Yamimaru and one of his monsters, who end up tearing into the Rangers without their powers, eventually leading to this situation where it looks to be the end for Riki, until he exclaims that his team are the only people who can protect Earth. This causes a rumbling sound in the distance, and a collection of stones begin to crumble, revealing the fairy light once more to our heroes, allowing them to morph, which is great timing as the V-Turbo Bazooka also happens to be complete now. Its design is pretty par for the course when it comes to finishing cannons of this era of the show, but I really dig how you first have to place a car engine into it before firing, and after defeating the monster of the week, they're able to bring Shiran to the fairy well, giving her life once more after sacrificing herself earlier in the episode. This next one's actually one of my favorites because it's one of the few episodes where we actually get any sort of character development for our Rangers. The episode starts with Zulten awakening a Bohma that terrorizes the city with his ability to turn adults into children. Eventually, we find our way to Yohei, who's currently chopping it up with the Beezies, trying to make them laugh, spitting game, you know the drill. Their teacher, Miss Yamaguchi, is getting on him for slacking all the time, but when the monster sends a beam targeting Yohei, she quickly pushes him out of the way, sacrificing herself and turning into a little girl. They go back to Miss Yamaguchi's house to confirm her identity and find a chart consisting of all of her students with written descriptions of their personalities and areas she'd like to see them improve. I can't tell if I find this to be really sweet or akin to something a serial killer might do, but we do end up getting a bio on Yohei describing him as cheerful and upbeat, and she hopes that he'll soon be able to straighten out and calm down with his antics. We also get one for Haruna describing her as bright and cheerful, and other generic words I would use for most female Sentai characters of this era. Initially, I thought we didn't get descriptions for the other 3 boys, but while editing, I discovered these to be in the background of some of the shots, and I translated them using Google. Not exactly sure why she would describe Daichi like that, but all I can say is that I feel bad. But with Yohei being flattered by her notes and feeling indebted for putting his teacher in this situation, he feels obligated to look after her and help bring her back to normal. The rest of the episode consists of him taking her to the theme park and putting his life on the line to show thanks for everything his teacher has done for him. Of course, they're eventually able to defeat the monster of the week and everything's fine. I know the bar isn't super high right now, but I really appreciate how this episode teaches Yohei a lesson and gives us a new perspective on his relationship with his teacher. This is the type of storytelling I've been wanting to see from this show, and for whatever reason, these episodes seem to be very few and far between, so I am really thankful when they do come up. In this next episode, Yamimaru awakens a monster that ate a golden apple roughly 21,000 years ago, a forbidden fruit that was only meant for Lagorn. This gifted him immense power upon consuming it. As you could see, there's a lot of power, and he uses this power to penetrate Robo and forcefully remove Daichi, where he awakens to discover that the monster has actually duplicated himself. The big version is just a copy, and he's actually set out to find the golden apple once more, now for Yamimaru to eat it, since it only blossoms once every 1,000 years. Unfortunately, Daichi is so gravely weakened that Dr. Dazai warns him that he can only withstand being transformed for another 5 minutes, and insists that he go back to the base for treatments. And in probably the most badass scene in the show, Daichi tells him we don't have time for that, and 5 minutes is literally all he needs. Eventually, Yamimaru and the monster discover the apple, but Lagorn's other goons are there to prevent him from eating it. Daichi, of course, arrives to intervene with only 5 minutes to be transformed and roughly 5 minutes left in the episode, which is a pretty cool coincidence, especially since that's just enough time for Daichi to mollywop the 3 generals and the monster of the week all on his own. Along with this, having a confrontation with Lagorn by himself, who swiftly steals the apple from Daichi, who, ironically, doesn't seem to be putting much effort in the fight here, I'm not gonna lie. Thankfully, the other Rangers arrive to destroy the apple before Lagorn takes a bite, and they summon the V-Turbo Bazooka, destroying the monster of the week just as Daichi is forced out of his Ranger form. But he's able to transform for an additional 30 seconds, just so that the team has enough strength to summon the robot's finisher. I know I have the reputation of having the mentality of a 5-year-old when it comes to this stuff, but I have to admit that this episode is pretty actually really fucking badass. Daichi comes off as really cool, but again, I wouldn't say that this is like crazy character development or anything like that. He just comes off really cool in this episode and has some really dope moments. In episode 19, we actually find out that Shunsuke had a little brother who biked straight into a truck and fucking died. Absolutely insane start for an episode that came out of nowhere. It's really sad, and the plot focuses on Jarmin awakening 2 Bohma brothers, the older of which has actually decided to change his ways after their 20 millennia slumber, since they were sealed after an incident that almost resulted in the death of his little brother. So now he chooses peace and encourages his sibling to do the same. Shunsuke obviously relates to this and tries to help the Bohma's younger brother understand. Unfortunately, Jarmin ends up injuring the little brother to the point where the 2 are forced to fuse their powers together, or else he'll die, resulting in this mindless rampaging Bohma that Shunsuke happily kills at the end of this episode. Probably the wildest turn of events that I've ever witnessed, and I don't know, there was a lot of whiplash here. Next episode, Yohei jumps in front of an attack meant for Haruna, resulting in him getting poisoned, in probably the most disturbing way a Sentai can portray something like this. Again, I don't know what it is about this show, but there's a lot of scenes that freak me out here. Haruna goes after the monster on her own in hopes of finding an antidote, which results in her hitting her head and losing her memories, and joining the side of the Bohmas, which makes it difficult for the team to fight until we discover that she was actually pretending to have memory loss so that she can fall in front of the monster's attack and receive the same antidote from Zulten, as he believes that she's on their side. This allows her to bring that same antidote to Yohei for the treatment that he needs so that the team can come together once more and destroy the monster. It's a pretty cool twist and turn of events. It's pretty cool that like Pink Rangers of this era are like super smart and cunning. Like, I know 5-Man was after this, but like 5 Pink has a similar episode to this that's also pretty cool. And I think they mention it in the Super Sentai vs. Gal Ranger movie. So like, I don't know, I think it's like really cool that like women always get these episodes where they could like be really badass and do something incredible for the team. I think it's just dope in general. What? In the next episode, a sumo wrestling Bohma is wrecking havoc on the city, challenging everyone to sumo matches. And even the villains are annoyed at this because they were really expecting him to fuck shit up, but instead he's just choosing to wrestle a bunch of local kids. Miss Yamaguchi, of course, caring about her students, is moved to avenge her class, recruiting Nagare Boshi for the job. But he rejects her offer for training and insists just Daichi do it instead. After this, the two have a wrestling match where the monster expresses his love for sumo wrestling after Lakia had introduced it to him, making this the third monster of the week that isn't entirely evil. I really like how this show depicts the monsters as having more agency. Like, most series might do this as a one-off sort of thing, but it's cool how often this happens in Turboranger and in different ways as well. That being said, the Bohma tribe eventually casts a spell on him to start rampaging, and Daichi protests the idea of destroying him, which normally would just result in the team killing him anyways, but instead they choose to do something really fun in this scene where Turbo Robo is dressed like a sumo wrestler, and they challenge the monster to a match where he's able to come to his senses after being reminded of his love for sumo wrestling, making this the first monster to successfully have been rehabilitated by the team. He then kills himself almost immediately after this. I think it's because he's so ashamed of losing or something. I don't know, man. Justice for these monsters. I want to see one of them live. In episode 22, Nagare Boshi is out harassing people on his motorcycle in search for Riki. Miss Yamaguchi catches wind of this and even shows up to Dr. Dazai's lab, berating him for encouraging Riki to ride his motorcycle and fight Nagare Boshi, saying that he's been promoting gang activity. Mrs. Yamaguchi instead encourages the team to not worry about Nagare Boshi, and tries to have a heart-to-heart with him, hoping it'll get him to stop. She gives this story about her first year teaching, about a student that actually lost his life in a traumatic accident, and Miss Yamaguchi blames herself for this, believing it was due to her negligence. Hence why she feels the need to intervene here, because she doesn't want to see the same thing happen to any of her other students. Even though Nagare Boshi claims to have dropped out of her class, she still sees him as her student, even if it was for a short time, and thus feels responsibility for him. This explains so much about her character and why she's such an overbearing teacher that takes such great interest in her students' lives. I wasn't kidding when I was alluding to her being my favorite character. She has more depth than any of our Rangers, to be honest, and I really like that about her. There's another confrontation between Miss Yamaguchi and our boy, where she ends up tying in the theme of the show when talking to him, saying how she doesn't want to see him waste his youth on violence. The Rangers try to convince Miss Yamaguchi to stay away from him as he's dangerous, but she scolds them, saying how she's shocked to hear this from the teenagers and how they should never want to give up on another human, despite how difficult it may be for them to understand their point of view, giving the Rangers a new outlook on how to deal with the wandering Bohma. In the next episode, Shunsuke and Haruna are out of town visiting a village that's full of ghosts, causing Haruna to get scared. Of course. After this, it's summer break, so the Rangers decide to visit Namegawa Island, and the villains awaken a monster from inside a coconut, and I still can't tell if this looks offensive or not. Episode 25 has the exact same plot as Power Rangers Turbo episode 38, which confusingly for some was not an adaptation of this show, but instead Gekizo Sentai Car Ranger. But just like that episode, the Pink Ranger has a dog that's been turned human by the Monster of the Week. I'm interested if you guys can think of other examples of Power Ranger episodes that are adapting the plots of episodes that didn't come from the direct Sentai footage they're adapting. This is like if Cosmic Fury randomly decided to adapt an episode of King Oger for no reason. It's really weird, but I find it super fascinating. In the next episode, the Rangers are at school, even though it's summer break. They even mention that it's summer break, but I'm not gonna act like I know what's going on here. Riki is challenged by Nagare Boshi as a means to finally put an end to their rivalry, which is an excellent fight, by the way. I especially love this part where Riki decides to lock in, but the confrontation ends with the two being badly wounded. And he can't rest long as Jimba takes this as an opportunity to attack the city with a monster called Invincible Bohma, leaving Riki as their only hope as the other four Rangers have been turned into eggs. Don't ask me, dude. We both know it doesn't matter. Riki gets fucked up this episode, making it all the more impressive that he's able to save the day in this one. Even the monsters are asking how he's not dead here, and he tells them it's because he is invincible. Kinda tough. I'm not gonna lie, that's kinda tough. There's another point in this episode where Riki pulls this Carter Grayson fake out moment. Like, Riki may not have the longest reel of badass Red Ranger moments, but this entire episode is a good display of how cool he can be. Too bad the only thing I know about him is that he just loves baseball. Next up, we have an episode with Jarmin awakening a Bohma she plans to turn human in hopes to infiltrate the Rangers' base. The problem is, She's really bad at doing this and blows her cover almost immediately. So the Rangers go after her, but Yohei notices she's wearing a bell, which reminds him of this teacher he used to want to fuck as a kid. So he's like, guys, I can change her, which results in him getting brainwashed. A fate that's all too common for men this age, though she does end up having a change of heart like other monsters in this show, but is ultimately destroyed by Jarmin at the end of the episode, leaving Yohei heartbroken. And the way I see it, there's only two paths for Yohei for the rest of this season. Either he's going to start hitting the gym hard, or he's going to get really into League of Legends. I just pray that the team keeps him off Reddit. In the next episode, Nagoreboshi has a dream where he's attacked by this ninja girl in a red outfit, claiming him to be the future of the Bohma tribe. In the next scene, the generals are being scolded by Ragorn for not defeating the Turbo Rangers yet, and Jimba promises to have a plan that is sure to succeed, and Ragorn tells him not to even bother coming back if he fails, which he's resolved to do. After this, he finds the Rangers patrolling the city, but they're interrupted by Nagoreboshi, who, of course, doesn't want to see anyone else defeat the Rangers. He now has the ability to radiate this light that was gifted to him by this lady in red that seems to drain the Rangers and Shiran of their powers. Upon further analysis, Dr. Dazai confirms it to be demonic aura, which negates the power of fairies. Unfortunately, the Rangers still have to deal with Yamimaru and Jimba, who's still on the loose, even sending a message to the Rangers base that results in an explosion. But the team is determined to fight, even without their powers. And once they leave, Dr. Dazai notes how they're no longer safe in their base, leading us into a commercial break. Afterwards, the Rangers are seen attempting to take on Jimba without their powers, Shunsuke being the first to try henching, like an idiot. Riki encourages him, confident that the team will be able to fight again using their own power, which honestly sounds even dumber than what Shunsuke was trying. The other four Rangers end up getting thrown around by Jimba, resulting in him going in for a finishing attack. Riki sees this and turns towards the threat, willing to sacrifice his life for the team, which somehow results in him being able to transform. Maybe everything in the show is just bullshit. Unfortunately, Riki's hot streak doesn't last long before he finds himself in a situation needing to be saved. So the rest of the team jump in, allowing them to regain their powers as well, resulting in Jimba's defeat. He of course grows into a giant monster that overwhelms Turbo Robo, to the point they need to evacuate the combination as a result of all the damage inflicted to Turbo Truck. And just when things seem to be over for our Rangers, a giant mechanical fortress emerges from the ground, transforming into a robot and making quick work of Jimba, finishing him off for good. But we're now left on this cliffhanger, as the Rangers look to this robot, unsure whether to consider it friend or foe. In the next episode, the Rangers enter this fortress, uneasy about what may be inside, when they turn the corner to find Dr. Dazai pointing them to another new mecha called the Rugger Fighter, a colossal fighter jet that I'm sure has no effect on the environment whatsoever. I'm not gonna lie, I am a little disappointed that within the course of 2 episodes we get 2 more mechs. I kind of wish the show had a little more time to breathe, considering that these are the only 3 we get throughout the series. And also, I'm a little disappointed considering how this is a car-themed Sentai, and neither of them are cars. Though I guess they technically are the speeding or high-speed Sentai, so in this case, the jet plane is kind of in theme, though I'm unsure how fast the building can move, which, by the way, is called Turbo Builder, and is essentially the first mech of its kind, acting as the Rangers' new base, and an enormous robot that can carry the other Zords. It's the progenitor to robots like Max Magma or the Delta Base, or really any of these guys, and while I am able to appreciate the historical significance of this, I'm a little disappointed with how little transformation there is from a toy perspective, though giving it being the first of its kind and having to allow space for other mech to fit inside, I kind of have to give this a pass. In the next scene, we see Ragorn punishing Jarmin for her inability to destroy the Turbo Rangers, and she ends up making the same promise Jimba did in the last episode, swearing to not return to the base without defeating the Rangers. Yeah, so she's dead. For whatever reason, Daichi is super hung up on Turbo Truck being out of commission, bringing him to this deep level of depression. At one point, he even starts talking to the car as if it could hear him, but he spends most of the episode riding around in the Zord as a way to distract the oncoming threat, so the Rangers have more time to work on the Rugger, which isn't fully operational yet. And admittedly is another really cool scene, as it once again proves Daichi is probably the most capable member of this team besides Riki, even getting the final blow on Jarmin towards the end of the episode, which results in the Rangers' first outing with Rugger Fighter, transforming it into Turbo Rugger. I'm not a huge fan of the transformation sequence for this thing either, with it looking like a parts former, but I do kind of dig the whole rugby aesthetic it's going for, so overall it's pretty okay. We end the episode with Dr. Dazai attempting to repair the Turbo Truck when, from out of nowhere, it appears Nagoreboshi has entered the mecha, kidnapping the Doctor, and ending the episode on a cliffhanger with the Rangers not knowing where he is. You could probably guess what ends up happening in this next episode based on the title, but we begin with Nagare-boshi offering to let Dr. Dazai free in trade for Turboranger. So Riki arrives at the scene on board the mech despite Doctor's orders, but we quickly find out it's a distraction meant to ward Nagare-boshi away from Dr. Dazai, so the other Rangers are able to step in and save him. Immediately after this, Lehda arrives accompanied by a Bohma who has to have the most over-the-top name I've ever seen for a monster of the week in my life. Super Demonic God Bohma. We're fucked. He's able to throw Red out of the mecha, but thankfully Dr. Dazai is able to enter and pilot Turboranger despite being chained up, which is incredibly cool, and even blasts the words Turbo Robo, signaling to the Rangers that Turbo Truck has been repaired and that they'll need both mechs to destroy Super Demonic God Bohma. We're fucked. And this episode gets even more badass when we find Chiron piloting Turbo Builder, the smallest character in the show, piloting the team's biggest mech. It's almost comical. She's able to ward off the monster long enough for the Rangers to get to Turbo Robo, but Riki realizes that they won't be able to take care of Super Demonic God Bohma if Lehda is still around causing a ruckus, so he jumps out of the mech to challenge him to a final duel, where Red is subjected to a great amount of psychological torture, having visions of Jarmin and Jinba running around. But he's able to break free, striking the GT sword through Lehda, resulting in an explosion. But the professor claims that he's not gone for good. Even though he literally is, we never see him again after this. Nagare-boshi is there to witness this and comments how the destruction of the three generals is just like what his dream prophesies, and claims that this is now his era. With Lehda out of the way, it's now time for Turbo Robo to combine with the Rugger, becoming Super Turbo Robo, who seems to have forgotten Leg Day. Yeah, it's not my favorite super combination, and I can't even really call it a product of its time because I really liked Super Live and 5 Robo. It might be better if these bottom pieces formed around the leg instead of acting as giant slippers, because it's not even in a fun way like G6. This episode is the final act of this 3-part arc, now having almost all of the generals destroyed, which is not something I was really expecting for this point in the show. We still have another 20 episodes, and I feel like Zulten alone isn't enough to carry the entire legacy of the Bohma tribe, so I'm really excited to see what comes next. And by wait and see, I mean literally next episode, where it opens with Nagare-boshi looking for Ragorn. Meanwhile, the Rangers are preparing for the school play. Haruna has just been given the role of Cinderella to the disappointment of one of her classmates, Sayoko, who wanted the role for herself and finds herself wishing harm on Haruna because of this. When suddenly a mirror explodes in her face while Haruna is looking into it, almost as if Sayoko willed this into happening. Riki notices this, along with her magically gaining the ability to make volleyballs explode, and suspects that Bohmas may be involved. So he offers to walk her home when he's immediately kicked out of her house by her parents after telling them his name. She insists he stay as he's the only person she's invited to her birthday. I guess it's her birthday today, and Riki's the only one invited. They prepared a whole ass cake just for an impromptu walk home. It's here that Sayoko describes a legend in her family, stating that a young man will appear before her on her 18th birthday, as the two are connected by the red string of fate, which makes Riki boy start to blush. Her parents interrupt their private dinner, offering a glass of wine to the two minors. I think they're allowed to do it since they're not half Filipino. Riki notices the Bohma aura from the cup and thankfully decides not to drink it, as it's then revealed that both of Sayoko's parents are in fact Bohmas. At the same time, Nagare-boshi decides to literally swan dive through this window, revealing that he is the man of legend and that Sayoko was the woman he envisioned in his dreams from that earlier episode. 20,000 years ago, she was born to the Bohma tribe and raised by 2 Skull Men, along with the Amulet Bohma who has been watching over her and is responsible for instances like the mirror exploding earlier in the episode. But her and Nagare-boshi are destined to be the Wandering Bohma together. So he pulls her away from the action as the Rangers take care of the monster of the week. They eventually find their way atop this cliff where she falls. Nagare-boshi reaches out for her and the two are suddenly entangled by the red string of fate. They're lifted up into the air and begin to take on a new form, becoming Wandering Bohmas Yamimaru and Kirika, where the two then ascend into the Bohma castle. Upon entering the base this next episode, they quickly sidestep Zulten to find Ragorn, who rejects them for being half-bloods, confirming that the two are in fact half-human. But they claim that there are things that only they can do, being half-bloods, as no full Bohma has ever been able to tame Bohma Bat Dragoris. Ragorn says he'll accept them into the tribe if they're able to accomplish this. Back at Seyoko's old place, Riki finds a baseball he once signed on display that was used in a game-winning home run. Apparently, Seyoko has kept it all this time, showing how her and Riki go way back. Throughout the rest of the episode, the two wandering Bohma send a bunch of people into this pocket dimension to perform a seance for Dragoris that consists of a bunch of teens shaking ass to rap music. The Turbo Rangers are also there, and it takes everything in their power to not boogie down along with them. Eventually, Dragoris is reawakened, and Riki's pissed, causing him to chuck the baseball from earlier at them. Episode 33 is a classic body swap episode, but instead of one of his teammates, Yohei ends up swapping faces with this ugly kid. Now, that isn't my personal assessment. In fact, I think I kind of look like this kid, but the show straight up calls him ugly at several points. This is because, as stated previously, Yohei pulls, which makes this dude jealous, giving Kirika the idea to unleash this body-swapping monster. In this next episode, they awaken slave-driving Bohma. It's not the weird part yet, give me a sec. They awaken slave-driving Bohma so that they can whip Zulten and command him to start farting. Apparently, with just the rumble of an ass cheek, Zulten is able to lull even the most high-strung individuals into a deep slumber. I've also seen plenty of girls online capable of doing the exact same thing. We actually do end up getting some of Yamimaru's backstory this episode, seeing how he was outcasted by both humans and Bohmas back in the day, even comparing Zulten's suffering to just a fart in the windstorm, in contrast to everything he's gone through, which really doesn't sound as cool as I think the writers wanted that to. This eventually leads to Zulten actually teaming up with the Turbo Rangers to get out of the situation, but it doesn't go anywhere past this episode. This next episode, a police officer is unsuccessfully handcuffing a local pickpocketer. After running away from him, the woman finds herself in the presence of Kirika, who happens to be uncovering the ancient Bohma gem. So this lady uses her talents to steal it away from her, and is startled when she gets attacked. She runs into Daichi, who's able to ward off Kirika and the monster, but during this encounter, he ends up getting entangled with the lady's handcuffs. Eventually, they make it back to the base, and the lady is able to pick the lock, setting them free. She attempts to lie to the team, saying that she's a police officer and that the gem needs to remain in her custody, but no one believes her after Shiron points out that she stole Daichi's wallet. So he runs after her, and the two end up getting handcuffed again somehow, when the gem begins to expel this light pointing towards this mountain, and the villains reveal that this gem is meant to lead them to the path of the demonic sword, able to slice anything in its path. While on their way to investigate, Daichi inquires why the woman is so comfortable pickpocketing innocent people, and she claims that there's not a lot of things she can trust in this world, but one thing she does trust is money. Bars. Daichi scoffs at this and gives a speech about humanity and peace and all the normal toku nonsense. I'm sure you've heard this exact speech worded a million different ways by now, but I always really enjoy him. Daichi and his newfound homegirl are able to uncover the sword, and unfortunately they run into Yamimaru, who is too formidable an opponent for Daichi to handle on his own, leading to the lady choosing to wield the sword on her own as she's inspired by Daichi's bravery, wanting to believe the best in humanity. Surprising everyone, she strikes Yamimaru, cutting his sword in half, and then gifts Daichi the sword. Not gonna lie, it's awesome seeing Daichi wield this giant demonic sword. Unfortunately though, he doesn't have any sort of forethought with this and allows it to get blown up with the monster. This literally could have been the Ranger's trump card, but Daichi just mindlessly chucks it like it's absolutely nothing. The episode ends with the pickpocketer lady being arrested and asking Daichi, a minor, to be her boyfriend when she's out of prison. I assume he'll be legal by then, but she's very bold to ask that in front of cops. In episode 36, Shunsuke skips after-school gymnastics to reminisce about the time he first fell in love on a beach as a child, until the Bohma arrives, stealing his memories. And in an interesting twist, Kirika finds him alone on the beach and attacks Shunsuke, making him drop the seashell that was gifted to him by his childhood crush, simultaneously jogging the memory of the two characters at the same time. It's then revealed to the viewers that Kirika was the girl Shunsuke met all those years ago, but the two are never able to talk about it, so they never figure out that the two were in search for each other. Admittedly, not as traumatic as the dead little brother, but honestly, this episode kind of makes me miserable. This next episode's actually a big one for me since it guest stars Ryo Narashima, who, if you didn't know, played 5 Yellow and the Flower Ninja Sakura in Kaku Ranger, which honestly just reminds me of two much better shows I could be watching right now. She interrupts Haruna while she's practicing stick, Still honestly don't know what the fuck she's trying to do here, to be honest. And of course, she's playing an incredible martial artist, just like the other two characters she's portrayed, which makes it all the more obvious why they had to bring her back to the show twice. She literally washes Haruna in this scene. They could not waste her talent on just a one-off character. And just like Five Yellow, she is the younger sister of a teacher, Miss Yamaguchi, who recently visited her to get her mind off work as she's been so stressed out recently losing 2 students from her class. And she also mentions how she has 5 problematic students who she could tell are keeping secrets from her, making her question whether she's fit to be a teacher at all if they can't trust her. So Narashima's character is here to investigate what they're hiding from her older sister, when eventually she discovers that they're the Turbo Rangers, and the episode ends with her promising to keep their secret. There's a brief moment where she tries transforming into Pink Turbo, but is unable to because of the whole lore of this series, but for whatever reason she's still able to see Chiron, which is weird. It's honestly just a little disappointing to me. Like, I know it really doesn't matter who's transforming into Pink Turbo, considering like it'll probably be the same suit actress anyways, but I don't know, it would have meant something to me, man. Like, she's probably my favorite Sentai actress, and I'm not even kidding. The next episode, Shunsuke gets in trouble at school for doing too many handstands. He also harasses Haruna at one point, but they don't really make a big deal over that. This leads to him unleashing this monster from a painting that he has to destroy. It's a standard Sentai episode. It ends with Kirika and Yamimaru getting fed up with losing, blaming Ragorn for all of their misfortune, leading into episode 39, End of Lagorn. Yamimaru and Kirika kidnap Riki and force him to fight Ragorn in a battle to the death, as a means to distract him while the two go after the Life Stone of the Bohma Castle, which has me thinking that the Bohma Castle actually may run on cleaner energy than the turbo machines. This episode is actually insane, as we essentially see Red solo the biggest, baddest Bohma in the tribe, in this really good fight scene considering one of them can't really move at all. And of course this leads to a mech battle where the Rangers are forced to summon Turbo Builder for the second time in the series. I was gonna make a bigger deal as to how little they summon Turbo Builder in the show, but like they literally have to use it one more time to beat Max Magma, so I really can't complain much. But the episode ends with Yamimaru and Kirika proclaiming themselves as the new leaders of the Bohma tribe, now that the Turbo Rangers have finally defeated Ragorn. We're pretty deep into the video at this point, so feel free to hit the like button if that means you're enjoying yourself. Or even subscribe, though I could totally understand if you're not feeling super committal yet. Watch a few more of my videos to figure out if this is somewhere you'd like to stick around. That's totally okay. That being said, it's the point in the video where I ask you guys what you would like to see next on the channel. But before we get into that, I have some things I would like to clarify. Typically, we do polls where I essentially give you 4 options and ask you to vote on what you would like to see next. And normally we do this on the YouTube community posts as well as Twitter. And I just wanted to say that I'm decommissioning the Twitter. We're no longer doing the posts on Twitter because every time I do it, the polls get different results on different platforms, but more people vote on the YouTube poll. So I always just end up doing what YouTube says anyways. Honestly, it's my bad as it is. I shouldn't have been doing it on 2 different places. That was silly of me to expect people on YouTube to go to Twitter when they're already on YouTube, so of course they're just gonna stick on YouTube. Like that was my bad entirely. So we're just doing the poll on YouTube now. So if you want to vote, just go to the YouTube post section on my channel and vote for what you would like to see next. I also want to clarify something briefly before I present to you what my ideas are for the next video. A lot of the times when I do these polls, I get a lot of comments, and this happened recently when I was talking about it on live stream. By the way, we stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. EST if you want to go check them out. They're a lot of fun. People have been enjoying them from what I could tell. Every time I do one of these polls or talk about, you know, asking you guys for help as to like where I should put my energy towards next, I get a lot of comments that are like, that I believe to be very well intended, where they're essentially just like, do whatever you want. Don't worry about us. Don't worry about the algorithm. People will come to your videos no matter what because of your personality and X, Y, and Z. And I really appreciate that. I really do, because I understand the intention there is to tell me that, like, you know, that you guys are down to watch whatever. And that means a lot. Unfortunately, and this is why I do the polls, is unfortunately, I have a lot of ideas. I have so many videos that I want to do that if I were to start working on all of the ideas I wanted to do, nothing would get done because I am only one person. I can't work on every video idea I have, or else nothing would ever happen. It's impossible because I do everything. I do have a thumbnail artist, but like I do all the script writing, the recording, the editing. It is all me. I don't have a team. You know what I mean? Like I need your help to point my focus in the right direction. That's all the poll is. And so when video ideas don't win, it doesn't mean they're gone or they're scrapped forever. It just means, well, I'm pointing my attention to the thing the people say they want more first. And I understand that may have been my fault, especially in the last video where I implied that I really didn't want to work on the SPD video. Truth of the matter is, if I didn't want to make that video, I would never have presented it as an option. The reason why you see these options are because these are the videos I want to work on. All these videos that I tell you about are videos I genuinely want to work on. With all that being said, here are my ideas for the next video I would like to work on for the channel. And the first one actually being a contestant that's coming back from a previous poll, that being Kamen Rider Hibiki. I'm still very passionate about this video idea, and like I said, when ideas don't get voted for, they don't die, they're just pushed to the side for the next round whenever I decide to bring them back. And I think enough time has passed to where I think I want to bring this idea back and tell you, like, I think the Hibiki video would be cool. I know someone else kind of did a similar video recently to what I would want to do, but again, this is still an idea that I think would be really cool and fun to talk about. For this next option, I know I said on live stream that I would put Power Rangers Ninja Storm for this next segment of the poll, and you know, I'm not gonna lie to you, the more I thought it over and the more I kind of bounced the idea around in my head, the passion's just not there, unfortunately. I love Ninja Storm. I think Ninja Storm is like one of my favorite seasons of Power Rangers. It's in my top 3. It's just like right now, I don't think I have anything that I can add to the table for a Ninja Storm video. And I know the comments are gonna say, work on it anyways. We love to hear your takes. I get that and I appreciate that. But I truly don't feel like I have anything to say about a Ninja Storm video right now. Not saying I'll never come up with a reason to want to talk about Ninja Storm, but right now I don't have it in me. So I'm sorry, Max, and I'm sorry, Daniel A from the Patreon. Shout out to Power Rangers Primal Rage. I just can't talk about Ninja Storm right now. That being said, this next option is another topic coming back from a previous poll, and that's Power Rangers Zeo. To be honest, that is the only Power Rangers series I kind of really want to rewatch right now, but I really want to talk about Zeo. I really want to rewatch Zeo. I don't know why. So Zeo is the next one. And also to show you that ideas come back, and these next 2 options are brand new options. The third one being the original 1980s Ninja Turtles cartoon. This is a show I have been wanting to talk about for the longest time. My brother came into a live stream and said, you should do a Ninja Turtles video. And for whatever reason, the chat was really down for that idea, which made me really happy because I like I said, I've been wanting to talk about Ninja Turtles for a while, but obviously it's up to you guys in the poll to decide what you would like to see next. And this final option is the option that I feel like most people watching this video will be interested in, because it would be the continuation of the over-explaining Sentai series, which again, I love doing over-explaining Sentai, so if this option wins, I'm more than down to do it. Don't think that I don't want to do it. That is Mask Man. I've gotten a lot of comments asking me to cover Mask Man, so I'm hoping that that means that people will be excited about this. I have no clue, so you know, if you want more over-explaining Sentai, Mask Man is the next option to vote for. Like I said, so many people recommended it that I feel like my expectations for this show are pretty high, so I'm interested in seeing how that will line up. Anyways, those are your 4 options. Like I said, just go to the post section of my YouTube channel to vote on whichever one of these excites you the most. And don't be worried, don't be concerned if your video idea doesn't get picked, because it can always come back. That being said, I hope you guys are enjoying yourself, and let's get back to Turbo Ranger. With the Wandering Bohma now leading the tribe, they awaken a monster that curses the children of Japan to walk aimlessly, never able to stop for rest. This is in retribution for the 20,000 years they spent wandering the planet as they were outcasted by both Bohmas and humans. And I want to take a second to talk about how cool the Wandering Bohma are, just like as a concept. Like the idea of this third group that's slightly related to the villains, but also partially human, like taking over the villain faction is really cool. And it's probably one of the biggest things I have to praise Turboranger for doing well. It's another Sentai where I low-key find the villains to be more interesting than the main cast. I just kind of wish our first group of villains were a little bit more defined, because that would have just made this all the more interesting if there was more infighting. Other portions of note this episode is that at one point Yohei flags down this helicopter and the pilot's just down to go for a spin with him. It's so random and out of nowhere, and I just had to mention it because the pilot doesn't say anything. They just chill, they just vibe for a minute. It's kind of cool. It's just like incredibly out of nowhere. But at the end of this episode, we see the silhouette of a monster promising that tomorrow will be the last day of the Turbo Rangers. In this next episode, he's revealed to be just another generic monster of the week, but with a Spanish guitar. He's actually the least threatening Bohma they've encountered thus far. So much so that Daichi begins to pity him and decides that he's not even worth fighting. The Bohma begs for them to use a sealing technique on him so that he doesn't have to live in fear of the Wandering Bohma or get destroyed by the Rangers. Everyone suspects this to be a trap, but Daichi is interested, leading to him stripping down to his drawers in public. The monster reveals that his clumsiness was all a facade, to literally catch Daichi with his pants down and steal his morpher. But it actually ends up being a double facade, as Daichi has given his real morpher to Riki, suspecting that this may be the case. And the episode ends with the Rangers celebrating the defeat of another Bohma, listening to pop music on this speedboat. This next episode is Chiron's birthday, and because it's her birthday, she gets to live out your fantasy of being a tiny person swallowed by a big person. She's set to get digested in an hour, so it's up to the Rangers to literally carve her out of the monster's stomach. I know at least one of you. Up next is episode 43, The Sixth Soldier. You know what time it is. It may be late, but we're finally at the point in the show where the Turbo Rangers gain their sixth Ranger, coming in the form of this nerd that doesn't know how to jump horse, or whatever the fuck this is. I know y'all tried explaining this to me last time, and I promise you, I read every comment, but I hate to admit, none of it sticks. Kenichi is ruthlessly bullied for this and seems to be at his wit's end, until one day he discovers a monster outside of his classroom window. Thankfully, he's saved by Yohei before anything happens, resulting in him getting on his hands and knees, begging to join the team. They tell him that even if they were to give him a morpher, that he still wouldn't be able to transform into a Turbo Ranger since he's never been exposed to a fairy. Oddly enough, he actually has been exposed to fairy magic, but instead of calmly explaining this to the group, he decides to poison Yohei and steal his morpher, leading to him running around town, stopping petty crimes, and unfortunately he's not strong enough to handle the Bohma upon confronting them, which results in Yohei somehow getting kidnapped, and us seeing the most amount of emotion we've probably gotten out of Daichi this entire season, outside of when his car broke down. They ask him to turn in Yohei's morpher, but it's to no avail. The Rangers arrive to an encounter with Zulten and the Monster of the Week, but the villains immediately decide to let Yohei go, giving up any sort of leverage they had, but unfortunately, Yohei still can't help much without his morpher, until Kenichi arrives with a plan to take down the monster, slipping a faulty bullet he developed in the school's lab into the monster's vest, which backfires, allowing Yohei and the team just enough time to take him down. So obviously, Kenichi doesn't end up being the team's sixth Ranger, which is a little disappointing, but I guess the world wasn't ready for that yet. Though I do wish they kept him around a bit more to some degree. Like, he's incredibly smart and would have been a really cool support character to just have around for these last few episodes. He could have been like this show's Boom, but like in an even more tragic sense, considering he also technically is one of the chosen ones. I feel like it would have been a really cool concept. Fun fact though, Kenichi is actually referenced in Zenkaiger episode 12. For those of you who don't know, the Zenkaiger weapons are able to summon the powers of past Ranger teams, and their 6th Ranger's weapon is only able to summon 6th Rangers, and at one point he ends up using the Turbo Ranger gear, where we see him summon Blue Turbo, which is actually really neat. In this next episode, Kirika is woken up by her guardian Bohma, who says it's time for her to enact the Wandering Bohma legend and become a full Bohma, leading her to this room to perform a seance. Riki visits, hearing word that the neighbors are complaining about strange voices. He enters to discover Kirika learning that once in every 50,000 years, a Wandering Bohma has the opportunity to become full-blooded. To do this, she needs to fuse with Armored Bohma that is about to arrive in orbit on this comet. Riki tries to discourage her from going through with this, but it's no use. Tensions escalate until Armored Bohma finally lands on Earth. Kirika greets him, asking to merge, and the two come together and transform into Armored Kirika, absolutely decimating the Rangers with a single blast. But it appears she's having a hard time fully merging with the armor, speculating that she may still have human blood in her system. She returns to the Bohma castle, bragging about her newfound power, which makes Yamimaru jealous, making Kirika feel bad and promising to find a way to turn him into a full Bohma as well. Back at the battlefield, the Rangers find themselves without hope, all wanting to give up, except for Riki, saying that if not for them, who would protect Earth? Probably the other 10 groups of 5 bozos from episode 1. I really don't like this scene. There have been other times where like they've questioned giving up before, but like this is the first time they outright just choose to give up besides Riki, which like I guess isn't necessarily a big deal because it does make the characters feel more human. But by episode 44, I expect these characters to like embody the essence of the indomitable human spirit or something. You know, like classic Sentai shit. I want to hear them like I want that like warm feeling that you get in the center of your chest, hearing all the characters say something corny. Like that's the Super Sentai spirit. Something like this alone isn't enough for me to outright say I dislike any of the characters, but when my point of reference for them is already so limited, it's hard for me to like just let this slide. But eventually the team get their act together and go after Kirika at full force, despite all odds. At one point, Riki gets stabbed with a lance, but without hesitation, he plucks it right out of his shoulder and throws it back at her, like it was nothing. And this causes Kirika to separate from her armor. This next episode primarily follows this boy that's become infatuated with this magician lady, and I feel so bad they had to draw freckles on this poor boy. They didn't have to do that to any of the other kids. It just feels disrespectful. Turns out Kirika is the magician lady who summons this Bohma who stamps his head, giving him the ability to also wield magic. So the Rangers set out to break the child from this curse, and towards the end of the episode, we suddenly see this storm cloud erupt from nowhere, with a red dragon swirling amongst the sky, stemming from the corpse of Lord Ragorn, leading us into the show's final arc, where in the next episode, the Wandering Bohma challenged the Turbo Rangers to one final duel in hopes to settle things once and for all, as we, the viewers, can see Ragorn has been reawakened and is watching the conflict from afar. This results in a massive explosion that both sides end up getting caught in, leaving Haruna unmorphed as she witnesses the battle continue, remembering a time where all 7 of them used to be friends. This never fucking happened. Even if you want me to believe for a second that any of you gave a fuck about Kirika in the first half of the show, like, she literally hated Haruna. That's not something I'm making up. Like, she disliked her, like actively wanted to see her die. That's like a thought she had about her. They weren't friends. And but even if you want me to believe that for like half a second, I know damn well all of you hated Nagareboshi the minute he showed up in your class. Haruna actively has to be the most delusional Sentai character I think we've ever seen. After this, we see an Aether portal appear on the beach for absolutely no reason. Dog, I'm tired. I don't really care at this point. Everyone goes through the portal to find themselves in the land of fairies in search for the Stone of Love, in hopes that it will quell the conflict between humans and Bohma, which it kinda does stop the fighting, as it causes both sides to lose their powers. It works in the same way as putting a gun to my head would help me get rest before a big interview, making this the perfect time for Ragorn to make his big entrance, now reintroducing himself as Neo Ragorn, which is a fairly intimidating suit. I'm shocked they were able to make the forehead pulsate like that, but they couldn't find a way to close his mouth, which does kind of deflate any sort of intimidation factor he had before. Since the Turbo Rangers are low on power, Haruna asked the team to spare her whatever excess power they may have to allow her to defeat the monster of the week on her own, which again is pretty sick. Like, I do love when Pink Rangers get like big moments like this. The Rangers return to their base to find that they're no longer able to see Chiron, meaning that they're fully drained of their powers. In episode 47, the Rangers are venting their frustrations about not being able to transform or see Chiron. Meanwhile, Kirika and Yamimaru find themselves waking up in this cave, being helped by a man calling himself Wandering Bohma Kasim, who tells them they need to stop the fighting, and also how Dragolis is now under the possession of Neo Ragorn since the Wandering Bohma no longer have power. Neo Ragorn also creates a new Bohma beast using the essence of Dragolis, and in the next scene, Miss Yamaguchi finds the Rangers looking very upset. She tries to help them out, expecting them to be in better spirits since they're so close to graduation, when suddenly they're attacked by Dragolis Bohma, biting Miss Yamaguchi and turning her into a vampire. And if things weren't bad enough, the Wandering Bohma also arrive, but get their asses beat from all ends, once again being told by Kasim to stop fighting. Seeing no other options, Chiron steps in to disarm Dragolis, losing her wings and growing to normal human child size in the process. And suddenly, Miss Yamaguchi gains her wings and then shrinks to a fairy size. Dr. Dazai arrives stating that Chiron's sacrifice has made her lose her fairy magic and has now taken a human form. If she's not restored to normal soon, she'll die. And I guess Miss Yamaguchi will also die if nothing happens. I don't really know what's happening anymore, and to be honest, I'm not even sure if the show knows. On a side note, the show has suddenly decided to depict the foot soldiers as having teeth for the first time in 47 episodes. I don't know how they keep finding other ways to gross me out. And just in case you still cared about the plot, not sure why you would, the Rangers are suddenly able to transform for no reason. They say it's because they're dedicated to saving Chiron, but like I feel like that's just bullshit. But they are able to defeat the monster of the week regardless. Also, I guess Chiron was actually fine this entire time because at the end of the episode, she just turns herself back into a fairy without any sort of explanation whatsoever, leading to this awkward moment with Dr. Dazai holding Miss Yamaguchi as she's turned back to normal. The episode ends with the Wandering Bohma looking over a cliffside, hoping to one day regain their powers, just like the Turbo Rangers. 48 opens with the Wanderers begging for their powers in a thunderstorm, in hopes that being put in a dangerous situation will trigger them to transform in a similar fashion to what happened with the Rangers in the last episode. Kasim also finds them trying to do this and uses his magic to calm the storm, pleading the two never transform again, as the Wandering Bohma are meant to bring love and peace, being the connection between humans and Bohma. He then reveals the tribe's backstory. During the war between fairies and Bohma, a beautiful woman rescued the evilest beast of the tribe, Devil Mask Bohma. After finding him injured in battle, the two quickly fell in love, but with the human tribe not wanting to forgive Devil Mask Bohma for his sins, the two make a life for themselves deep inside the mountains, where they have a child, who was the first Wandering Bohma, and continue to hope that one day, humans and Bohma will find a way to live in harmony. Unfortunately, Nagariboshi is not moved by the story, and continues to beg for his powers. Neo Ragorn hears this and casts a red web over him, giving Nagariboshi a more monstrous form, causing him to rampage and even attack Kirika as she's trying to get through to him. Kasim steps in, taking a blast from the monster, which severely weakens him. But when he sees Sayoko entangled in the red web, he uses the last of his powers to blast a beam from his pendant, severing the two from the webs and turning them back to normal. Seeing no further use in the couple, Ragorn sends an attack hoping to finish them off for good. But just as they suspected, the two are able to transform again now that they've been put in a life or death situation. Kasim again pleads that they choose peace, but Yamimaru refuses to listen and pushes him over a cliff, causing Kasim to lose control over his disguise and revealing to us that he is in fact Devil Mask Bohma. He tells the Rangers that Kirika was his daughter and begs the Rangers convince her to follow his path of goodwill. There's kind of a huge plot hole here in the fact that she's the first half-breed Bohma human, yet Nagariboshi appears in a flashback with her as a full-grown adult. But like, does anyone give a shit anymore? The Rangers try relaying the information to Kirika that Kasim was her father, but she doesn't give a shit either, claiming that Yamimaru is her only ally in this world and that she doesn't want to break their promise. Honestly, Kirika is my favorite character in the show. Like even above Miss Yamaguchi and Yamimaru. Not only does she have the most plot significance, but when you really think about it, she's just a severely unconfident and like shy teenage girl that comes to find that her entire life has been a lie, leading to her overly relying and trusting the one person that has given her clarity through this and has also made her feel seen. And she's incredibly loyal to him, regardless of whether or not he's a good influence, which plays into the show's theme of youth, showing how this is such a vulnerable and influential time in her life. The episode ends with the Rangers paying their respects to Kasim, where we also notice Kirika potentially giving a shit. In the next episode, she visits the resting place and finds herself being watched by Yamimaru. In the next scene, the Rangers notice that Lakia's constellation is fading, and we see Ragorn mumbling incantations in search of the Great Seal. The Rangers find Zulten, who also mentions how they're in search of the Great Seal right now, revealing it to be the biggest Bohma seal, holding 108 monsters from entering the human realm. Chiron reveals that there is a relation between Lakia fading and the seal being ready, as the Earth has yet to have gotten any cleaner in this scene that almost feels as though she's talking directly to the audience. So now it's up to the Rangers to find the seal before Zulten, but Yamimaru interrupts, challenging them to another battle. They try to explain that there's no time for this and attempt to calm their advances by bringing up Kirika's dad again, which makes her hesitant to fight, as we also saw in an earlier scene in this episode. Regardless, the two sides clash, but after an explosion mid-battle, they're forced to stop, as that means the seal has started to weaken. The Rangers find Kirika to be injured after this, where Riki once again gives a speech about how she is representative of the two sides joining together in harmony. Yamimaru tries to start another fight in hopes to end his feud with Riki and requests Kirika join him, but she once again is hesitant, until Yamimaru goes in for a finishing blow where she rushes in front of the blade, begging him to stop the fighting. But he continues to be unmoved, vowing to continue fighting alone. The episode ends with the Rangers defeating the monster created by the Wandering Bohma and rushing towards the quarry in hopes to stop Zulten from opening the seal. In the penultimate episode, the Rangers continue to try and stop the seal from opening, now having Kirika on their side as well. Unfortunately, Yamimaru is still obsessed with vengeance and tries to attack the team, but before anything happens, him and Kirika are kidnapped by Dragoras and are set to be used as sacrifices meant to open the Great Seal. Thankfully, Riki is able to intervene and stop the ceremony, but this doesn't stop Yamimaru from wanting to fight, as he once again challenges Red to another battle, just as the Rangers are summoning Turboranger for a mech battle. But it's not the end of the world, as Dragoras ends up sacrificing himself to destroy the monster of the week, allowing Riki and Yamimaru to have their final encounter, where Riki ends up sparing his life, hoping he'll finally come to his senses. This prompts Yamimaru to begin laughing maniacally and vanish into thin air, using his hidden darkness technique. We end the episode discovering that the Great Seal has actually been beneath Turbo Builder this entire time, leading us into our last episode, where Dr. Dazai explains how he initially chose this place to set Turbo Builder based on ancient fairy maps, which makes me question why he's so surprised about it being on top of the Great Seal. Like, you really should have been more inquisitive when looking at these maps. But given the situation they're in, the Rangers have no other choice than to ambush Bohma Castle, confronting Neo Ragorn head on, who very quickly overpowers them, though the team seems to be saved by Yamimaru, who also wants to fight Ragorn as well, using his hidden darkness technique. But Kirika discovers he'll end up dying if he were to use this technique for too long, rushing into the castle as well to stop him, but she's too late. Neo Ragorn is able to get the upper hand, and that is the last we see of him, for now. As if things couldn't get worse, Miss Yamaguchi has also somehow found her way into Turbo Builder, coming to check on the Rangers before their graduation ceremony tomorrow. Once again, could be interpreted as another massive overstep in terms of boundaries, but I'll let it slide because I really do like her character, and this next moment is actually really sweet. She of course discovers the teen's secret and gets on the intercom to cheer them on. This encouragement gives the team the spirit needed to end Ragorn once and for all, but not before he ejects them from the castle and grows giant in an attempt to move Turbo Builder from the seal. Thankfully, Ragorn isn't shit, but they still need to ward off the castle itself before being able to celebrate. To make things worse, Kirika discovers Yamimaru is still alive inside the castle, making the Rangers hesitant to blow up the ship. So all the characters call out to Nagare-boshi, asking him to get up before the castle collides with the robot. He awakens to tell everyone his life is no longer worth living, and attempts to destroy the castle from within inside, hoping to sacrifice himself, until Riki reminds him that doing this will leave Kirika on her own, where the two then reach out to each other once more, connected by the red string of fate, allowing Kirika to pull him out from the ship before the Rangers have to destroy it. In the next scene, all is peaceful. The Wandering Bohma congratulate the Turbo Rangers on graduation. Chiron decides to enter the stars and join Lakia in protecting the Earth from a distance. And the show ends with Dr. Dazai and Miss Yamaguchi watching the Rangers venture off towards a new future as they all enjoy the nature of the world they fought so hard to protect. The last scene is the five of them playing Leapfrog. Turboranger is a show I wish I could tell you I liked more. I find the theme of looking to the youth to correct the mistakes of those who have come before to be incredibly inspirational. This is tackled in the context of the climate crisis, which we are still facing today, as well as the idea of mending bridges and striving for a more peaceful future, as portrayed by the Rangers struggling with the wandering Bohma, along with all of the other monsters of the week that eventually choose the path of peace in this show. I've said it before, but our second set of villains and Miss Yamaguchi are the best characters in this show. I love how their teacher struggles to instill good lessons onto the youth, despite them rejecting her, even if it's to her own detriment. Her resilience and motivation to do what's right is exemplary of that indomitable human spirit I was talking about in an earlier moment. Honestly, if the Rangers just had any sort of more character development, or if there was really anything going on in the first half of the show, I'd probably say this is worth a watch. I wouldn't call Turboranger unwatchable or unnecessary, but to be honest, this is probably the worst show we've done one of these deep dives on so far. But I still think I like it. That is coming from the guy that said Alien Rangers was underrated though, so take that as you will. Thank you so much to my patrons Rat Toku, Andrew B, Sergeant Hooked on Henshin, Soundboard Daniel A, Omni Ranger, Tom E, Will G, Leor K, Bobby B, and Kat. If you want more over explaining Sentai, click the button on your screen.